Yes, if you had not yet seen the video of us talking to a real congressman and telling us the woes that Congress will face if they heard the warning that we have something slightly more devastating than the 2008 financial crisis. If they heard that and they chose to do nothing, this would be a grave error. And this is now even more well documented in this video here. The theory, all the pieces, like the anatomy of the crime of Citadel. Give this source by Swede Child of Mine a upvote. It's going to be in the description down below. And make sure that you are paying attention to the stock market with us each morning, bell to bell. I'm excited to have you here, and we are going to go straight in. So one of the first things that we do try to deliver is the upfront right away. So this is not that long of a document, so make sure that you do stick to the very end and continue to support the channel by bringing this video to 1,200 likes at least, and then this channel to 100,000 subscribers, both of which are very helpful to the growth of this story. Citadel has been perpetrating a crime, illegally counterfeiting shares into the marketplace in order to profit. They are selling shares they don't have and never intended to deliver. Citadel has been using their designation as a market maker to cover their activities, as well as continue to counterfeit shares. This poses an increasing risk to their own business, but more so to the overall market. And if you have heard of Austin Tobit's, look at this, they even refer to a Tobit's. Citadel has no clothes. They are posing a risk to the global economy. So let us see a catalog of the crimes of Citadel. This post is the collective narrative behind the play on GME by large institutions. There will be a multi-part DD post gathered from excellent insights on this sub. As there have been no confessions of these activities by the perpetrators, a la Bernie Madoff, or books that haven't yet to be written, this will only exist as a theory with pieces of evidence to support where we can. Neither Swede Child of Mine nor I are financial or legal advisors, so this is for entertainment purposes only. This will only exist as a theory with pieces of evidence to support what we can. It's designed to be high level, approachable, and supported by available sources where possible. Represent key players and interests as it relates to the events surrounding GME. It's incomplete. Where information cannot be confirmed, it will be marked as a rumor or speculation and should be treated as such. But it should not be a rabbit hole. It will be ongoing, will require updating, as well as contributions from you outlined below. So this is square brackets, open close is request for link to relevant DD. This is expert insight requested, and this is further research requested. Wow, this is already getting some footnotes here. Very cool. Part 1, the crime of Citadel. GME, the current price of GameStop stock is artificial. Bold move right out of the gate. First sentence. The first sentence is the stock price is being manipulated. In simpler terms, the price of GME is not determined by normal market dynamics, supply and demand. This is because Citadel and others have been illegally manufacturing fraudulent shares of GME, abusing their special designation as market maker to profit from their firms. Oh, Real Gig wants me to go to Amsterdam again. Special thanks to Lord Weird and Mighty Brows, guys. Give those mods some scissors in the chat. Seriously, they do so much for us. The more straightforward term for their activity is share counterfeiting, okay? So we've already talked about counterfeit shorts, also known as naked shorts, right? Naked makes it sound like a fun little like, oh, what could this economic term mean? Counterfeit makes it a little bit clearer. Citadel and others have been counterfeiting shares of GME, profiting from non-existent shares, dumping fraudulent stock to lower their price, and abusing system lapses to hide their activities. Their scheme that has grown wildly out of hand and now threatens to wipe out many more firms in the market due to their risky behaviors. So, Congress people, if you're listening up here, this is the sentence, right? This is the paragraph. It's clear as day, very, very compelling, and I appreciate this this conciseness right out of the gate. Let's see, the overall mechanics of this scheme. An FTD, failure to deliver, a key term to understand. An FTD is a standardized term for a delay in delivering a share that's been purchased. In the context of Citadel, an FTD represents a counterfeit share. In the US market, a share can be sold regardless of whether or not it actually exists. The financial system accepts the transaction at face value so that the buyer can continue trading. The delay in delivering a share is meant to be temporary, right? But for Citadel's case, they never had the share they sold. They abused their position to sell something they didn't have. Let's bring out Mr. Whiteboard. We have talked about naked shorting for so long, but it never hurts to cover it once more for the very simple and very perhaps the smooth brains out there as well. Here is that marker. Let's say that you have a stock and you would like to sell it. Well, that's okay. Let's say this is G for GME. You would like to sell it. That's no problem. You can exchange it for cash anytime you want. Let's say that I want cash, but I don't have a stock. Well, I can borrow it. That's why I'm going to do some dotted lines. And then borrowing the stock, selling it now, and then promising to give it back to you later, that is a short. This is a regular short, a covered short. Now let's assume that there is no stock, but I still want to sell it anyway. This G exists in a dotted box, and I can also borrow it to give it back later. But who am I borrowing it from? I'm not borrowing it from anyone. This is the different ways to be able to sell that stock. Now, the only way to be able to have this side of the arrow come back and exchange it for the stock again is for me to go out to the market and actually buy this stock or locate it some other way. I can even give someone else's stock back as long as I give the stock back to the person that I borrowed it from. Now, this way, since the stock never did exist, it need either to be same thing, right? Locate someone to borrow it from by covering it, or by going out and buying the stock at market value. So that is currently the two ways to be able to sell a stock. Have the stock or don't have the stock. Either way, you can borrow it from a real person or borrow it from the ether. This is supposed to be able to help us with asynchronous transactions, right? Sometimes the company that exists for the stock wants to be able to sell shares that don't exist. That's okay. It's meant to be an IOU. It's meant to be like a, hey, you want money right now, right? You want to be able to borrow it and give it back to me later, even though there's no one to borrow it from. That's okay. And that's the way that our economy in the Americas will work right now. I say the Americas, but really I'm talking about one America in particular. Outright share counterfeiting is highly illegal and one of the financial crimes that carries prison sentences. Check out how long a prison sentence using this link in the description. For Citadel to perpetrate this crime, they will need to hide it among their transactions to appear legitimate. FTDs can be legitimate and their enforcement is subjective. Will depend on the facts and circumstances of the particular activity. You guys are probably aware that there are a lot of gray zones in the economic world, right? You can build a monopoly. However, it's your intent. Did you mean to make this monopoly to make the lives of your consumers easier and the products cheaper and easier convenience? Or did you mean to buy out the competition so that no one can ever compete with you? So these are the questions of why FTDs are even possible and why are they sometimes perfectly legal. Citadel scheme part 1. Create a share legitimately. Number 1, Citadel activities are recognized as bona fide market making, an industry designation that allows them to special authorities and responsibilities. And with great power comes great manipulation. One of their special authorities is to create shares in the marketplace as part of their role of providing liquidity. So this is finance speak for keep the shelves full of stocks people want. Citadel is allowed to execute transactions without owning the share. In other words, market makers can temporarily create a share from nothing with the understanding that it is illegal to manufacture shares for their own profit. Essentially, they are the banker in monopoly. They go out and they say, hey, right now we ran out of paper money because the board only had so much. I'm just going to write I'm just going to create a napkin and say that there's going to be paper money eventually. I'm the banker. I'm not supposed to make money off of this, so that's why I'm allowed. And now that you're allowed, you can already see where the gaps are starting to see. They're starting to come out of the woodwork here. This temporary created share is recorded as a short, designated to be sold on the marketplace, then bought back within a period of time to prevent an enduring non-existent share in the marketplace. Shorting is also a common practice of borrowing a share from someone else's account. The borrowed share is sold into the marketplace and ideally bought back at a lower price and returned to the account. Many financial companies do this legally, Citadel included. The difference here is that the very first one, they're not supposed to be able to use this for profit. It's supposed to be able to create the market dynamics in real time, even when sometimes there's not enough monopoly pieces out on the board. There's not enough greenhouses, that's fine. They'll create some out of napkins. There's not enough paper money, they'll create some. The main point is that they are not supposed to turn a profit. However, shorting normally is supposed to turn a profit in some way, right? It has great risk, almost near infinite risk, if you guys have been following the channel. But if you do it right, you could drive companies directly into the ground, such as the attempt to drive GameStop into the ground by Melvin and Citadel. Both traditional shorting and bona fide market maker shorting creates a legitimate non-existent share temporarily. Again, the non-existent share is meant to be a placeholder until a real share is delivered. If the share is out in the marketplace long enough without being repurchased, the share is flagged as an FTD, a failure to deliver. Since there was no actual share delivered, it is never if it is never reconciled, it becomes counterfeit. There we go. Pretty simple, right? This is basically the steps it takes for a share to become counterfeit. Let me zoom in a little bit more and then go back into it. Citadel scheme part 2. It's only illegal if you get caught. The process of determining an FTD is technically complex. There are regulations for the amount of days which need to pass before a share is declared an FTD. Additionally, after a share is declared an FTD, there are additional times allowed for counterfeit shares to be rebought, with even more time allotted for market makers to do so. But once the allotted time passes and the delivery is still failed, the party at fault is subject to enforcement measures. The enforcement measures are weak. Small fines levied far after the violation, generally for less than the profit made from the activities, and it is difficult to track. Individual shares may trade dozens or hundreds of times per day, but there is no way to follow the path or origin of each individual share. So the counterfeit share is logged against the overall pool of shares, not knowing, Hector with the coffee in the morning, heck yeah, not knowing which particular one is non-existent, but the contracts for the sale remains on the books of the parties involved. While the enforcement agencies are not interested in the small volumes of counterfeit shares or low-cost shares, Citadel has been manufacturing millions of fraudulent shares at hot prices of hundreds of dollars each, getting away with it under the guise of bona fide market maker activities, and have yet to be settled. So they are pretending to do their job as a banker, but slipping banknotes underneath so that they profit themselves. This is a oversimplification of that process, but in essence, they are using these naked shorts to hurt stocks that they have a vested interest in hurting. And that is the definition. Tarred stock. Thank you so much for joining as a Gorillionaire. That is going to land you a coveted spot in the end screen. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. You are now a general of the Mo Monkey Army. Meatball is proud to serve alongside you. So a company with a short position on their books will retain the debt of a counterfeit share for the duration it is on the market. So it is only illegal if you get caught. As of right now, I'm just banking. I'm just doing my job as a person that is allowed to be a bona fide market maker. However, this is now a conflict of interest. Citadel scheme part 3, take the money. Once the counterfeit share is sold, it becomes an FTD. There are several options of addressing an FTD. So how do you get rid of these sneaky FTDs? Buying a share in the marketplace is the primary way of closing out an FTD. This is also called covering your naked shorts, and they don't want to do that. That's the normal way of getting out of your short position. A second way to close an FTD is when the price of the stock goes to zero and the stock gets delisted. This voids all of that company's stock, including the fraudulent shares. The FTD problem simply goes away with all the other stock. That's the one they've been wanting to do since GameStop was hovering around $4, $2. Like, this is the original plan. They were so close, and then boom, 1,600% up so far. And that is just the beginning. For a party engaged in criminal act of counterfeiting shares, their main interest is avoiding the consequences of FTDs. The second way, killing the company and the stock with it. They intend to sell shares they have never have and never pay for them. That's the easiest way. Lots of money, tax-free. Paying for shares from the marketplace is undesirable to Citadel, not only because it increases costs, the cost of legitimacy, but also because the price of shares could go up and make the transaction a loss. Flooding the market with shares also has the added effect of dropping the price of the stock because the market is overwhelmed with supply, and we've talked about this before. When multiple people, let's bring up Mr. Whiteboard. Remember the two ways to short this stock? Well, the two ways to sell this stock. Either way, this allows more people to have the stock because you have money. And even though you don't own this stock, you are exchanging people's money and satisfying their desire. Imagine these are hamburgers, and there's only so many mouths to feed inside a KFC Taco Bell combo. And you are outside giving people Taco Bells and KFCs that don't exist. You're just borrowing them from thin air. Well, right now, you are filling bellies and decreasing that demand, which means supply runs rampant and the price of the stock drops. This is just simple supply and demand, but with an extra little flavor barbecue sauce of manipulation here. So if the price goes so low, the stock gets delisted, the debt of the shares on the seller's books becomes a write-off, which they will enjoy a tax benefit from. So bankrupting cop manies is the most desirable outcome from the share counterfeiters. The targeted company is an unfortunate casualty chosen for its ability to be shorted into bankruptcy. This is the first part of Citadel's scheme. Target a company. So in essence, this is very much like the Thanos where the GME goes off, Scarlet Witch, and says, "You took everything from me." And Thanos says, "I don't even know who you are." It didn't matter that it was GME or AMC. It just mattered that it was a vulnerable stock that, you know, maybe people wouldn't mind if it suddenly started to not exist anymore. The snapping is what they wanted to do. So, note that the short positions are not publicly disclosed, right? And they have no actual obligation to disclose them. Company's bankruptcy closes all positions, so tracing these activities to Citadel is extremely difficult. These activities can happen entirely behind closed doors and leave little evidence in the public marketplace. This is what the sub has been working with. Trace evidence of counterfeiting activities in the marketplace. So if you are skeptical, if you are a person that is like, I don't know if this is exactly what's happening, well, unfortunately, with the current regulations in place, there's no way. We have to build on speculation. So there's two ways to do this, Citadel. You can either stop lobbying and supporting politicians who oppose transparency and shorting data specifically, or just show us your short return, right? If you don't want a regulation to tell you and force you to do it, just show us how many shorts you got. What are you afraid of? You afraid? So fourth part of the scheme, they took the money and they're going to run. Profitably closing an FTD, either via bankruptcy or repurchase, requires one thing: the price of the target stock to go down. In this case, the GME stock price went up during their scheme. This caused Citadel to find an alternate a way to close the FTD, so perhaps as a temporary stopgap or perhaps as a last resort, Citadel chose to perpetuate FTDs without closing them, and they would keep the FTDs ongoing as long as they could, never getting caught until circumstances let them exit their position, hiding until they escape. Since FTDs are reported by time, Citadel figured that they could reset the timer to avoid getting caught, very similar to floating credit card payments. They could do this in two ways. One, they could short the traditional way, borrow or acquire a batch of the shares from an exchange or dark pool, an off-exchange trading room, and then turn around and close their FTDs. Those new shorts would later become new FTDs, but they would give them a few days. Second, they could counterfeit additional shares. While it is uncertain if it was possible for Citadel to use counterfeit shares to close out FTDs, they're releasing more counterfeited shares into the marketplace, let them easily borrow or buy the shares back, and then turn around and close the FTDs again. Again, shorting gives them a few more days until the counterfeit shares become FTDs. It is the exact same as using a credit card to max out another credit card. Maxing out this credit card to pay off another credit card is 100% the process of creating a naked share, and that covers a naked short that has already become a failure to deliver. Catherine, I'm going to cover General Electric in just a second. Citadel could reset FTDs like this continuously, never running into enforcement limits without being able to reset the FTD timer again. And that is painful. How could they continue to do this? Well, we've covered that DTC005 may finally allow one share to be borrowed once only. So now we have some data, brand new data, that is perhaps a regulation that is going to close them out. The time stone on the Infinity Gauntlet, let's say. This will also keep the marketplace full of shares, normally a desirable outcome, but in the interest of their counterfeiting scheme, keeping an abundant supply of shares in the marketplace also keeps the stock price low, the availability of additional borrows high, and the interest on the borrowed shares low. If Citadel was worried about availability, they could also reborrow the share they just sold, borrow from A and sell to C, and then borrow the same share from C, a process known as rehypothecation. Oh, and if you guys are wondering about the exclusive rehypothecation DD that Austin Tobit is going to do for this channel, specifically this channel, you don't want to miss it. I didn't say anything in the beginning of this video, did I, about subscribing? You definitely should consider it. We're on our way to 100,000, and we would love to have you on board. Citadel Scheme Part 5, we are at the final part, but at what cost? The cost of resetting the FTD timetable, kicking it down the road, is twofold. First, there's a daily interest paid on every shorted share Citadel has. The interest rate is decided by the lending organization and is related to the price and availability of the shares to be borrowed. So this is, as of right now, just straight up costing them money to continue fighting this fight. Does it cost you money? No realized gain or profit for buying and holding. Number two, for every short Citadel left open, the debt of that share remains on their books. As Citadel shorts more shares and the price of the shares went up, their overall debt increases. If the debt gets too large, Citadel could potentially be margin called. And that's the mixed squeeze, the margin call squeeze that we've been waiting for a long time. Their debtors would force Citadel to pay up. And this is the high frequency trading robots turning against the hedge funds and basically saying, sorry, executing Order 66, there's nothing else we can do but liquidate everything that you have. It is unknown when or how large their debt must be before Citadel gets margin called. Additionally, due to Citadel's activities, it is difficult to know what a legitimate short-term debt is on their books from their legitimate activities or what a fraudulent debt is from their counterfeiting activities. But by using a legitimate function to hide their scheme, they can achieve the legal results, selling shares which they don't have and never intend to deliver. Citadel's activities also pose an extreme cost to the system. Fraudulent shares circulating in the marketplace means that investors may become unsure that their shares are legitimate, or investors may become unsure that the price of the stock is a reflection of legitimate supply and demand. So this is changing our trust in everything. Remember contract for differencing and the scandal with Robinhood? That is just a tip of the iceberg for hurting the American people's trust and the worldwide people's trust of the financial markets. How can they get away with this? Well, if you don't want them to get away with this, make sure that you check out this video over there with Ro Khanna, my congressman from Silicon Valley, and how he has now listened to both me and A. Tobit, the person that wrote the Citadel Has No Clothes, the Everything Short, and the Walking Like a Duck, Talking Like a Duck. The two of us co-host this interview with Congressman Ro Khanna. If you guys haven't checked out that video yet, it is a good one, just 20 minutes long, about exactly how the first congressman has been warned about a financial crisis worse than the 2008 crash. If you guys like this video, please consider supporting the show by pressing the join button down below and coming on the live stream, sending a super chat, and talking with me. The most important piece is that you continue being you, because I like you just the way you are. The Mr. Rogers of Stocks is signing off, but I appreciate you, and I hope to see you in the money. Peace.